actually commemorate the saving of the Peninsula Hotel. And a monumental time it was when we look back at the newspaper articles and all the hullabaloo that would have gone on in Maylands, and how interested people would have been put their foot right out to say enough's enough, and the demolition of that building is just not going to happen. And they really worked quite hard. We've got the, other than living evidence of people around that time who could remember what was happening then, we've certainly got a large amount of memorabilia, particularly newspaper articles and so forth that happened through that time. And that's what I want to celebrate, and I'm going to do that by not inventing the wheel, but we had Betty Ratcliffe, who was our secretary of the Peninsula Association for many, many years, was instrumental in actually keeping the whole thing going and keeping it alive. And so she did a talk several years ago, actually, it says here, Memoir of Betty Ratcliffe, February 2013. And so it's something she would have written, isn't it, at that time, because she actually, previous to that, she actually sat here and gave a talk.
She gave it to Terry because by that time she was quite blind, which was quite a memory.
Yeah. So we have actually got a verbal talk, which has also been transcribed, but her actual written account of that is far easier to read out rather than go through verbatim what actually happened at the meeting, but it much covers the same sorts of things. So if you bear with me, I'll read through this. It's well worth it because it's basically got it encapsulated in one area, plus her actual trials and tribulations with regard to that. Just from my own point of view, I was the last president of the Peninsula Association as it was dying away and as it was becoming less and less. And greatest admiration for Betty in the work she'd done. She worked here full time. She used to come up here in the morning with her briefcase, sit in that office, do all the things that needed to be done, and in the evening, up 8th Avenue with her briefcase done, and this was like a full-time job for years and years and years. And I don't know who else could have done that like she did that, unpaid work, just for the love of this building. Greatest admiration for it. Anyhow, this is basically Betty's words. Betty was secretary of the Peninsula Association from March 1993 and managed the building until ownership was transferred to the City of Bayswater in June 2000. The Peninsula Hotel was built by Gustav Levy in 1906 on a large parcel of land on the corner of 8th Avenue and Railway Parade in Maylands. He owned the property until 1936 when, wishing to further his agricultural interest, he sold it to the Swan Breweries. They operated until 1974, when they resolved to demolish it and build a tavern on the adjoining land, and the peninsula space would become a parking lot. This caused a public outcry, organised by Friends of the Peninsula, and in 1976 the demolition order was cancelled. By this time, much of the hotel's interior had been stripped away and removed, and at a considerable cost of the WA government, City of Stirling and the Swan Breweries, the removed items, staircase, gerra floors, frames, floors, stained glass windows, etc. were restored. The Friends, by this time, had become the Peninsula Association and had presented a good case for using the building as a community centre for non-profit organisations. And this was approved, with the City of Stirling being responsible for overseeing the credentials of user groups. This became onerous for the city, and in 1980, Swan Breweries transferred ownership of the building to the Peninsula Association, which, encouraged by use of community groups, bedrooms, parlours, were rented out as offices to qualifying groups, which held their members' meetings in the large dining room, the saloon bar and the public bar. These spaces were also well used as meeting rooms by organisations which did not have offices in the building. Despite their best efforts, the association struggled always financially because of the low rents charged, as there was never the capacity for worthwhile restoration and or refurbishment. In the Peninsula Association Constitution, the Secretary was described as being responsible for the day-to-day running of the Association's assets. The building was our sole asset, and she realised that having taken on that responsibility, fortunately for Betty, besides herself, there were two other new community members who had some commercial experience, so that their first committee meeting was revolved to explore means of raising revenue to improve the building. While our tenants and user groups were not-for-profit, some that had their own large memberships were paying minimal fees for use of the building, and they could well afford to pay more. So the first thing they did was to raise rents and hire charges. These were mostly very well received, except it kept them all informed and what we hoped to achieve. The tenant groups, who were all represented on the committee, were encouraged to get their members to also become members of the association, and certainly felt that members involved would appreciate their efforts. So some of those who were protecting the building was classified by the National Trust as a Register of Places of National Estate, registered with the Heritage Council and the Municipal Inventory of Stirling, 1993. About this time, the Lotteries Commission of WA announced that we would establish a heritage grants program for the conservation of landmark building sites. And the main requirement was that there should be a comprehensive conservation plan for the site. And after some very helpful advice and guidance from Michael Crouch, they applied to the Heritage Council of WA for assistance and agreed for a grant of $5,000 to have a conservation plan prepared. So they engaged the heritage architects, Constantine and Griffiths, to do the work, and as a result were able to then apply to the Lotteries Commission for heritage program grants. They had tenant problems. The living warden at the Peninsula had a master key which opened all doors. They had arranged an inspection by Chubb to give a report on fire safety measures, and all rooms had extinguishers installed. When the wardens tried to open the office doors, they found that the lock had been changed and immediately rang Betty. She went straight to the building and rang our usual blacksmith and had him replace the illegal lock with one of the Peninsulas. This office had been rented for a year early by a political group. Betty then called the contact number for the tenants and learned that they were unaware of the lock change, but there had been an internal dispute with their organisation. The Bakerway group was responsible. After an emergency committee meeting, it was resolved the tenancy agreement be cancelled immediately and their property removed from the office. This commenced a period of great harassment for the committees by a few individuals who had political and commercial objectives and wished to take control of the building and use it to further their own aims. When we were flooded with over 70 applications for membership for the association, at one time we smelt a rat. The names and addresses looked genuine, but almost half of them had the same telephone number. When checked, this was revealed that the number of particularly militant unions which apparently supported the antagonists. When the SECWA required us to remove trees from the front of the building, they reported this as vandalism to the local newspapers. And complaints were made by them to the Attorney General, Peter Foss, that we were acting illegally, and the Attorney General castigated us publicly without getting the facts. When we were successfully defended our actions, no apology was made by the Attorney General. They disrupted a Saturday craft market held on the premises, and a group of over 50 people invaded the building during a committee meeting, and the police had to be called, including the canine section, to clear them out. Incidentally, I can certainly vaguely remember some of that stuff happening in the local newspapers. There's pictures of police and all that sort of stuff, but it was something that was sort of, from where I was sitting, was happening in a remote area. But Daphne's nodding her head and well knows what that was all about. The good news was that our application for Lottery's Heritage Grant had been successful, and we were awarded $80,000 mainly for repairs to the roof, which leaked badly. This news was most encouraging, but we did not realise that our committee members were feeding information to our attackers. This person, who had their own reasons for resenting the changes the committee was introducing when they were when they came to light, it was dismissed and her organisation had to vacate the premises. We hired a living couple to act as wardens, and there was an immediate improvement in the care and cleanliness of the building. Betty was having a meeting with the architects and Phil Griffiths when the wardens gave me the Daily Mail, which included a letter from the Lotteries Commission withdrawing our grant because of some adverse report they had received about who was running the building. Of course, Betty was absolutely devastated that the attackers could apparently wield such influence, and she was so angry that she rang the Minister for Gaming at his house one night and said that unless our committee were given the opportunity for a meeting with the Lotteries Commission officers responsible, we would go public with the story that we would be accused, judged and sentenced without being allowed to defend ourselves. It worked. And we had our meeting with the Lotteries Commission and our grant was reinstated. It seems that one of the officers checking grant application had some connection with our attackers and accepted what they had said. And Becky puts the, in inverted commas there, so impartial. We had our annual general meeting very soon afterwards, and two of our attackers, the commercial interests, had the effrontery to turn up. But there was about 80 of our own members present, and in my report I ran through the problems that we had experienced with these dissenters, but finished with the news that we had received a grant of $80,000. The two dissenters did not stay for afternoon tea, but left to the sound of, with the rafters ringing with jubilation. These people didn't give up. They just moved to try other pastures. The commercial interest, a few months later, they acquired they requested from the City of Stirling that they grant a lease to the building to open a restaurant, which the council meeting then asked by the Mayor for a comment on the request, simply stated the fact that the Peninsula Association owns the building and the City cannot grant a lease on a property that it doesn't own. And of course, the matter was dropped. The applicants eventually ran a restaurant in the Albany Bell building, but it was never successful and has soon disappeared. As for would-be politicians, I received a call from the Heritage Council some months asking that I knew about these two gentlemen who had apparently used their connections with the Peninsula as a reference, and were now looking for heritage premises to rent as an office, and their political party has since met its end, and I suppose their political ambitions with it. Meanwhile, back at our ranch, our committee was busy getting on with improving matters for the Peninsula. And in 1993, a grant of the first of 4 heritage programs grants were received, totalling $250,000, allowing much restoration and conservation to the building, such as tuck pointing repairs and painting to the dome, installation of security key system, replacement of the veranda. Our own increased income meant that we were able to repaint many of the parlour and bedroom offices, purchase more appropriate light fittings and furniture, and many other small improvements, all with the approval of the heritage architect with whom we were in constant touch. We also wanted to raise the profile of the building, and John Barnett did a feature on his Travel WA television program for Channel 9. Did anybody remember seeing that? It was really quite good. And then the same station made a short film for TV which purported to be the Addams Family, but all parts of the play were by footballers, eagles and those kind of people. A couple of articles on the building, a bridal program, did a fashion shoot in the premises, and WA was chosen as the host for ceramic exhibitions which were held at the centre over a week. A local dance company created a ballet which played over 3 nights with the original music by Ivan Czar. A member group, the Peninsula Folk Club, weekly concerts for some years in the Moontime Room, and it was very popular, and we decided to broaden the range by having other musical events. and these were well received. To celebrate the Peninsula's 90th birthday in 1996, we decided to have a well-advertised open day. All tenant groups participated by opening their offices and had their members on hand to explain what their clubs did. Car clubs exhibited their vehicles. We had a large range of building artefacts gathered over the years and photographs of the interior taken during the demolition and restoration period, as well as the contentious film on the computer showing the history of Maylands. We were also contacted by descendants of the Levy and Clean family. Many of them had never been in the building and were amazed at the beautiful features. Hundreds of people crowded the rooms on the day and decided all the hard preparatory work had been well worth the effort. All of the committee were ageing, and while the members and user groups supported us, they too were getting older and there were no volunteers to take on the running of the building, so we decided to suggest to the City of Stirling that we would transfer ownership of the building to them. Stirling was sufficiently interested to arrange for its own architects to do an appraisal and estimate of how much the fully restored building would be worth, and the final figure came to, or how much it would cost to fully restore it, $172,000. So they went to the council to transfer ownership, and they gave a few firm commitments, but the works identified by the architect carried out. Had a few meetings with various city officers and councillors, and things were progressing, and suggested that Maylands would become part of the, when it was suggested that Maylands become part of the City of Bayswater, this brought it into the negotiations with Stirling. The matter was dropped. It took about 2 years before it was resolved that Maylands would become part of Bayswater, and the executive of the Peninsula Association, Roscoe, John, Pam Gaunt and myself approached the newly elected South Ward councillor Terry Gaunt, who agreed to support and bring the matter of acquisition to the City of Bayswater Council. It was decided to invite all the councillors to view the building, as most had never been inside to see the beauty of the place. It proved a worthwhile exercise, although some councillors were not in favour of the proposal. Councillor Gaunt was certain that it would soon happen, with a very enthusiastic John D'Orazio, the mayor, turning him halfway up the staircase and said, "This is such a beautiful building, we must have it." Negotiations were begun, and soon after the deed of gift was drawn up in the Peninsula Association, which included several conditions. The $175,000 be allocated to complete urgent required maintenance. The front parlour be set aside for the Peninsula Association. Council resolved to acquire the Peninsula Hotel and agreed to the terms of the gift. The building was handed over to the city in mid-2000. Mention should be made of the diverse groups who use the Peninsula on a regular basis, such as the tenants and hirers of the large meeting rooms. There were usually about 10 tenant groups and the same number of hirers: Historical Society, car clubs, folk club, employment agency, Weight Watchers, bottle collectors, yoga, art classes, natural parks, art society, and even a Shakespearean study group. The centre was open Monday to Friday, and there was usually 2 or 3 evenings per week when it was open. They estimated that by the mid-90s, approximately 3,000 people per month visited the centre. While good relations were the norm between management and other groups, there was the occasional hiccup. We had a tenancy and hire agreement which carried conditions designed for general harmonious protection of the building, some of which were onerous, but on 2 occasions were accused of discriminatory practice. In both instances, the group insisted that they have preferential treatment. One complaint in 1994 was dismissed by correspondence alone, but the second, more serious charge in 1998 was heard by Nicholas Haslock, Equal Opportunity Commission, and the charge was dismissed. In each case, the group voluntarily surrendered its tenancy. One battle I had was with the taxation office, and it cost the Peninsula Association $8,000. As I mentioned, we had living wardens, Bertie and Daphne Milborough, who gave wonderful service while living rent-free in-house. Can't remember the details now, but the ATO took exception to this arrangement and we had to pay. Fortunately, we had been making some money and we had put into a term deposit towards further restoration work. We protested, of course, and wrote to the WA federal members pleading our case. The only acknowledgement of support we ever received was from Stephen Smith, a member for Perth, and Senator Andrew Murray. About 1997, the Heritage Council held its annual Heritage Awards in the main hall, and visitors were given a tour of the building. About 1998, the National Trust of WA held one of its monthly council meetings in the Moontime Room. Council members were shown around, and many of them were unaware that the Peninsula Association owned the building. It was a National Trust councillor between 1993 and 1999, but it never occurred to me to publicise our ownership to my fellow councillors. I just assumed they knew. In spite of the many problems which presented themselves, Betty really did enjoy her association with the Peninsula, and it's such a beautiful place that she counts herself lucky to have been involved in its management. With the support of the hard-working committee members and member groups, a great deal was achieved, and she's proud of being part of it. It goes on, but that's enough for the moment. And I was slightly neglectful, but Daphne and Sandy are actually here. That's Daphne, who actually lived here, and Sandy, who would have lived here as a child. And this.
No, I wasn't a child, but I used to come.
Yeah. She must have been a child.
Oh, yeah. I'll leave it there.
And to actually have this building as your environment must have been just a lovely, lovely time in your life. And I can see from Betty's terrible regrets that beyond her control, it turned into a nasty situation. And I have to say that I can remember this floor, actually you didn't want to stand on it. It was shiny, and it was absolutely a prized thing. Still, I mean, it could come back like that, but how much work would it take?
It upsets me when I see that.
Absolutely, because of all the work that was done to keep it up that way. Yes.
Nearly 50 bricks. That's as many as I
Oh, wow.
put it in there, so if anybody wants to
Yeah.
how many bricks.
Yeah, just, Chris has given me a list.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Roger, do you have the key to the loo or what?
Absolutely.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. And I think you might know your way.
I know the way, I think.
Roger, can we go back to the people that actually saved the Peninsula in the first place? There was actually 6 people, and a man called Wayne Paulson, that I don't know what became of him, he's probably dead a long time. But there was 6 people in all, and he in particular took time off of work to raise $160 to fight the cause, if you like. And they did everything they could to raise money, and they went to any lengths to do it. One of the people was Horry Miller's daughter and husband. I think they're probably still around, but they were the people that were involved. And there was a fellow called Des Hanson. He came from, went to live in Tasmania, but he was the only one who had the day off to go to the auction and save a lot of the things, including those lovely silver dishes that we have up at the police station that have always been a treasure here, and a lot of the light shades and everything. So those 6 people really should be noted, I think.
Absolutely. If I knew about those, if I had that information, that would be well worth.
We did have
putting
it
in.
actually. They sent
Yeah.
it to you and it may be in some of those.
That's right. There's a
But I
lot.
doubt it because they worked pretty silently with it.
It's worth capturing that. I haven't been through all this in detail. There's just so much of it. This is the PowerPoint presentation, isn't it?
It is Paulson.
Yeah.
But this Des Hanson, he was the only one that went in the Department of Commerce, I think, and he actually bought those silver dishes and took them home, but he eventually brought them back to us in 2001.
It's wonderful to get that back. Another thing that anecdotally I'd heard, and I can't remember who said it to me with regard to the safe in the parlour.
They bought that so that it couldn't be, they were hoping that it would be an obstacle because it was so encased in cement that they would have had to blast it out, and that held the whole thing up a bit too. But those people worked very hard.
thanks for that. John's just going through some of these articles that have been collected, which demonstrates what was happening in the community at that time.
Can I make a quick
Yes.
comment here? I notice here Association member Dr David Blair. The first headmaster of the Mayland School was a Mr Blair.
Oh wow!
I don't know
You
if
might be the
he's
same
connected
family.
there.
Yeah, it's good to catch that. Thanks, Daphne. Wonderful.
If anyone knows whether there's a connection there or not, I don't know.
Timing might be a little different, but you're right, David, with regard to families. It's
Yeah.
good to know that.
If only-
Yeah, if you could flick through these, we'll just have a look at, just giving a broad, we're very interested in the pictures that show the demolition and just how far that had actually gone, and some of the state of the building at that time when it was when it was actually just neglected, and it's a bit sad to see. A couple of the original drawings, nothing's changed, it's how it was, but some of these pictures somebody had taken showing the partial demolition of the inside.
The building's 110 years this year.
Original tiles around the fireplace.
Looking at that, you see what a daunting prospect it would have been when we see some of the colour photographs. We'll actually see the deterioration. What a daunting task it would have been.
Is that the bridge over the road?
I think Sterling gave them 25,000 and the state government gave them 25,000. So that went a long way, but the money raised from the hiring of rooms was, valuable.
And I think we realise, even with our own homes, particularly a building of this size, it's really a bottomless pit for money, and it doesn't matter how much you put into it, there will always be requirements. One of the things that happened with regard to the money that needed to be collected was, in fact, it was a large amount of money was stored away for painting, and we had people come and do scrapings to find out what the original colours were, so that when the repainting gets done, it gets done as per the original. By the time that money was there and that job was ready to be done, they discovered the concrete cancer needed to be done, and really that kind of restoration turned out to be more important. And really it wasn't until the city of Bayswater wants to use this as their offices while their offices were being rebuilt in Bayswater that a lot of work was done.
There's a panel missing in that top story there.
Yes.
They came in 3-foot sections. At the East Perth Cemeteries, we've got there of Meta's price list of 1927, giving you a price of the different types of panels they have. So if you want to check it out.
Of course, we know it's got dome copies on there now.
Actually, I'm just sort of sitting here looking up at the
Yes, a little bit of deterioration.
It's got worse and worse.
That I think has happened since they restored the top part,
I actually think that's
put the little Juliet thing on it.
Underneath it.
I think there's at least a couple of million.
there's that missing panel again.
Getting ready to be sold. Window frames, the door frames. And just recently there must have been some work needing to be done. You've seen the scaffolding that's going up to the chimney stacks. It's moved around the building, so some more maintenance is being done. Just check if that window's still there. It says saloon.
It's just lying around. Is that a stairwell without any stairs? No wonder the stuff with the water there.
What caused that colour?
Capstan wood.
They call it the nicotine room. It's a lovely bar.
Oh, that's a modern blood.
For many years, the Historical Society met about once a month. It wasn't like every week. And some of the early meetings that I went to, we had offices upstairs. And I think we moved to an office just above the parlour too, at another stage. But I can remember one meeting on a Saturday morning, being in that far room, and one of the steam locomotives, the Hotham Valley, came steaming past. And I thought, oh, how wonderful being in this building, seeing a steam locomotive go out, and it's a good feeling. You got these photographs, Daphne?
No.
Well, make sure you get.
No. I can't see what my husband's holding.
Or with a name.
Oh, Witherbay, that's right. Yeah.
No good, Roger. Put it back to where it was. More.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Oh, it's a sheep.
Thank you.
I think there's a couple of those.
Got a head for heights.
That was heroes, we just watching from underneath.
The life safety. Yeah.
Six.
Oh,
Yeah.
David's
Curtains just right dangling.
No, no rust on the ceiling.
We did have a lot of things. Yeah, the christening day. Beautiful.
So we're looking at parts now that aren't readily accessible, but just sneaky look through the window of the door. Again, the floor.
My kids' christening
Oh.
naming day in here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I think Beth must have done that 3 times to make sure it was good on the day.
Those, what I just said,
Just down here, yes.
where the dome is, what was that room? It was,
Yes.
Oh, that's the entrance, isn't it?
Yeah, entrance.
Yes.
I think that's the door to our parlour, actually.
Oh, good grief.
The guy that owns that grocery, huh?
Yeah.
The second one from the.
That's the Vauxhall, isn't it? The Vauxhall Club. Oh, Judy. Judy was there.
Which is still there.
Yeah, got the pedestrian bridge.
During some time, I forget what years it was, there was we had a committee member, Marie Lemon, and Marie said that there was the secretary of the Maylands Primary School, her name was Jill Constantine. Do you remember Jill Constantine? She must have had some sort of a beef with the Peninsula Association, and the story was she's got something that the Peninsula Association would really like, but they're never going to get it. And we did, about 2.5 years ago. We got a little parcel from Sydney. Jill Constantine had died, and her family found this parcel, and they sent it to us. And I'll quickly flick through and show you what it was as much as I can. This is the actual presentation of the deed of gift to the City of Bayswater. City of Bayswater sign up there. Oh, wonderful. I don't know what's happened to her. The last time I saw her about a year ago
Yeah, she's in a,
at Riversley Lodge, last I heard. But that her history and what she's been involved in Maylands would be another several nights talk. This is the Mora Hotel. I went there with my car club a few months ago, and I didn't realise where I was. And when I've gone inside, and as I've gone outside and looked back on it, I thought, oops, this is... And it's beautiful inside. It's just a lovely hotel. Yes, several years ago, a group of us went up to Dalwallinu and stayed the night as the guests of the Woburn Historical Society, and we went and had a look at the Gus Levy homesteads. And it was a revelation. It's another talk. A lot of information, a lot of photographs. But he used innovative
warehouses and farm buildings, didn't he?
Yeah. A lot of his engineering skills. A little bit of the European heritage, and his engineering skills with regard to a cool room underneath a water tank and all that kind of stuff. And that was cool under there. We actually went underneath. No, it's cool. It wasn't even full of water. I think that's pretty good. If you can show the Jill Constantine photograph, and you can just flick through that. It's just a series of photographs. And, that's it.
So what was in the parcel? People photos?
That's what I'll show you. So luckily, it's one opportunity everybody can actually see it. You can just close that all up altogether. Yeah. Yeah. Go back to... yeah. That's it. And I think if you... no, it's not.
It's taken away.
Yeah, just flick through those. So Jill had kept a book, and you can see we've just taken the string out of the side of the book, and we've just taken digital representations of all the stuff that she collected, and a lot of those articles we hadn't got in our collection. So she must have taken on, made it a particular hobby with regard to everything she collected with regard to the building.
So it was
Yeah, just see the headings there.
full scrapbook.
Yeah, build to save the Peninsula fails. Yeah, little chance of saving the hotel. So it was very pessimistic as to that it was going to be saved. So I'm starting to become a little bit more optimistic. Must have a look at some of these handwritten notes later on to see what she actually wrote on.
Yes.
I think that's back to the beginning again.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea there. It's a bit of an overview there, and there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of other history with regard to the building, so there's a file of it. And the next stage is actually when Terry Gaunt actually got this, through his instigation, he got the building occupied by Dome Coffees, and that's another whole story too, and which is wonderful to see where we are now. Yes, Colin?
I'd like a question to be answered, really. The fact is, was it a company or the hotel that had the liquor licence and then they wanted to build, or they wanted to put it here, or rejected, or what go?
No, I don't know that paraphernalia, what was happening
It's
there
right
at that
out
time.
all this time, yeah.
If you talk about what's happening now with regard to the licensing and what's going to be happening to that block next door, we're a bit more au fait with what's happening there, although it's still in High Court hearings happening, and still a question mark as to what's going to happen. Not to this building, but to that building next door.
Yeah.
But all that would have been a background with regard to licensing and getting that built and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's another whole pile of legal G's that would have happened at that particular time. Yeah, not aware of
They
that.
wanted parking, didn't they?
Sorry, they wanted
They
to.
wanted the parking. They
Yes.
wanted to come down and put the parking.
Yeah. Well, that's the bottom line. I wanted to knock this down. Chris has just got a bit of story to tell about the actual poster that we saw at the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation, and just have a look at this. Oh, okay.
A few months ago, I went for it to,
Probably kill this now.
she designed the posters that Roger actually put one up. Though I wasn't sure which poster was used, she wasn't sure which year it was, but now I think it's sorted it out. So this was the one that she thinks was probably used because it was simplified and Roger actually had it up there. So did we see that around town? Was the poster? That's an actual screen printing. She did the design. But she's got a great list of people in the house. They're all a bunch of young executives in 730 or something. And that was another one she designed. And that would be dodgy because they were just working out the lettering. But you can actually see 68. I noticed on one of the newspaper articles it had 33. And there was 31 at the bottom, so you've got to read that.
With the telephone number 715146.
Yeah, but I think the 31 on the article was related to car parks in lieu of, rather than the 68 that was related to here.
68 here. So she had a great list of 114 So it's a bunch of young people car sharing. So it's Paul Bridges, Sally Dickey, Red Affleck, Peter Woodward, John Dickey, Carmel Fitzgerald, Diane, somebody, Rod Cole and Diane Fruin. So a whole bunch of young people put that together, and they'll be the designing of it. So I think we should have those. So that only came a few weeks ago.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Chris.
And I've been, when years ago I was going through just bits of material I was looking at, came up with at least 48 different groups that have been using the, so which one have we got? There are quite a few there would have sort of political affiliations without actually being up.
One particularly comes to mind that we had a speaker, Len Zooks, actually had a studio up here for a long time. I think that was upstairs. And that was another. Would you remember Len Zooks, an artist at all? Yeah. We've still got some of his artwork in our office at the police station. Well, that pretty well wraps that up, and I really have to say thank Daphne and Sandy for being here. A great opportunity to refill in the building again, so that's really good. It makes it special. So thank you all very much for that. And